and it hits me, oh my gosh, this is that triangle.
You know, there's explanation for everything that occurred in the Rendlesham Forest incident that doesn't involve aliens at all.
It was completely silent. It comes right over our heads.
He saw a classic flying saucer really standing in the clearing.
He turned over to my father and held his hand, and he looked in his eyes and he said, "We're not alone."
Welcome to Podcast UFO for our live show. We're live every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on podcastufo.com. During the show, feel free to participate live in our chat room. And don't forget to like us on our very active Facebook page.
Hello and welcome to the show. This is Martin Willis, your host. And we have a special guest this evening. We have Dean Haglund. You may know him from the X-Files. He was Ringo Langly, one of the Lone Gunmen. They also had a show, The Lone Gunmen, in 2001, I think it was, for a little while. Interesting guy, has done a lot of looking into the UFO topic. Should be a lot of fun. Before that, we have Alejandro Rojas coming up with the news. And I want to thank all you supporters that support the show. If you can't support the show and you still want to listen to the whole show for free, all you have to do is listen every Wednesday evening at 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on podcastufo.com or the Dark Matter Digital Network. And that's Thursdays at 10 p.m. to midnight, and that's Eastern Standard Time. That's for the podcast of the full show. And, well, that's it for me. Alejandro, what's going on?
Yo.
What is
UFOs going on?
Is it? Good. I hope it's a little busier. I know it sounds weird to say the word busier, but is there? Has there been things happening lately? It's been quiet.
Yeah, somewhat. I mean, there's always lots of fake news and goofy fake stuff going on these days, but there's a little bit of non-goofy fake stuff.
Oh, good.
Even though some of it's being covered by the goofy outlets, but I'll get into that.
Let's talk about the less non-goofier stuff. Yeah,
well, one of these stories is being covered by The Sun, and it's about a Rendlesham Forest witness. So The Sun, of course, is blowing it up. Oh, brand new witness comes forward after decades, blah, blah, blah. It's actually not necessarily a new witness. It's someone who has come forward before, but Philip Mantle, who is a regular contributor to Open Minds, did an interview with this witness, Steve Longo, who was a security police officer at the base when everything happened. He was right there with all the guys when, in December of 1980, when a UFO was spotted by a bunch of people on several different nights. Of course, this is a very famous case. So The Sun Phil had sent his interview to The Sun and other media, and they kind of did a summary of the interview. However, Phil also posted it on our website, so we have the full interview on our website with this witness, Steve Longero, and it's gotten a little bit of legs here with some other people talking about him. Essentially, there are a couple interesting things he says. He says he was there. He remembers when it happened. He was there the night that Colonel Holt saw the object. Now, this happened around Christmas time in December. And what happened is that Colonel Holt, so the guys went out, in particular Jim Peniston and John Burroughs. They saw the craft one night. It got around the base that there was this UFO being seen, and the deputy director, who was Colonel Charles Holt, was skeptical. So when the object was being seen a night or two later, he said, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to figure out what it is. And Colonel Holt went out there. He says, they saw an object in the sky that beamed a laser at their feet and then beamed a laser towards the weapons storage area. They also saw a light, an eyeball-shaped object kind of going through the forest that broke into several objects and flew away. Mm-hmm. So what Steve says is he remembers being called out there, and he had some light alls. He was to set up some lights. And he says he remembers Larry Warren being out there. Larry Warren is a very controversial figure around this whole thing. He was there, but some people debate whether or not Larry actually saw the UFOs or was in the forest and not just at the base. But and then Larry goes off to say some really kind of more wild claims that nobody but him is saying. However, Steve Longaro says he remembers, he's pretty sure Larry Warren was out there with them. And he does remember Larry at the time. He says, I like Larry. Phil even asked, well, what about the controversy and stuff? And he said there were a lot of people who didn't seem to like him. And he wasn't sure why, but he likes him, and he was there. That's about all he said. As far as the sighting, he didn't see it break up and everything, but he did see the eyeball-shaped craft flying around. He thought it was really weird. It seemed to be watching them. It certainly was not the light from a lighthouse. That was a lighthouse that's off in the distance, and it was around the area of the weapons storage area. So he saw the object. He was out there. He remembers the other witnesses, Burroughs, Peniston, Cabot, and some of the other guys, and Colonel Halt. He said Colonel Halt kind of came later and then organized everybody, and that's when, they were all kind of running around. And then Colonel Halt comes out and he says, okay, everybody gather up, and here's what we're going to do. And then he organized the whole investigation, and that is actually on audio tape that was taken by Colonel Halt and those guys that you can hear online. But, that's essentially what he says. So nothing groundbreaking there, but it is interesting that he remembers Larry Warren being there.
Yeah. Yeah. By the way, Colonel Halt, retired, is going to be on our show next week to talk about...
he is?
Yeah, the Halt Perspective, his new book that just came out. Which is like $43 on Amazon. I was going to spring for it.
Kidding? It's that much?
Yeah.
Wow.
Anyway, so just one question. Why did he take so long to actually talk to someone about this, or had he in the past?
He had in the past. It's kind of more along the lines of why hadn't anybody bothered to talk to him more further, it seems like. And so Philip Mantle did a full-on interview. I think it's just that nobody's posted a full-on interview, but he is referenced in other books from what I understand.
Got it.
As another witness out there. And it makes a little bit of sense. I mean, he saw the object. He was out there. So he doesn't have the most extraordinary things to say. But so that's possibly why he didn't get more publicity. But, but he did this full-on interview with Phil, and he even writes in his story that, he decided, wow, I should give him a call. So also, Phil last week did post another interview, and this one with John Hanson. And John Hanson is the co-author of Colonel Halt's book, The Halt Perspective, that you just referenced.
He's in England, isn't he?
Yes, along with Phil Mantle. So John Hanson publishes something called The Haunted Skies, which are a bunch of books. I think he's done some videos in relation to them, but kind of interesting. Yeah, he just talks about how he got into the topic and everything, and he talks about working with Colonel Halt.
So what else is happening?
Otherwise, the only other thing out there, there's a couple of sightings and things, but not really much. But we did post a video that outlines kind of the highlights of the WikiLeaks emails now that they're all done. So that's in our UFO report, including Hillary Clinton talking about, being on Jimmy Kimmel and being disappointed that they didn't ask her about UFOs. So that's kind of interesting. How Podesta came up with that term, UAP. And related to that is Ted Rowe, who will be speaking at the Congress about that topic. And then, of course, the whole Tom DeLonge thing. And I guess to kind of a shout-out to another speaker at our conference, Ryan Sprague, but along with two people who used to work for Open Minds, Jason McClellan and Maureen Ellsbury. I haven't written about this, but I've heard some and I haven't listened. They were able to interview the co-author of Tom DeLonge's nonfiction book about the UFO stuff. So that's kind of some interesting insight there. And I've gotten some summaries, but essentially he says that, yeah, they were pretty bummed about the WikiLeaks outing their witnesses. But he says they don't think it's disinformation. He even referenced, Doty and some of these other potential disinformation projects, and they think it's the real deal kind of stuff. But that's kind of interesting out there, too, related to that.
Right.
But that's it. Well, the other thing, I guess, is you did kind of mention that Russian thing that was in the news.
I guess it's the Altair area of Siberia. There was another almost like Chelyabinsk-type meteor that went through the sky. And they're guessing it was about 3 tons. This just happened. It's on the news. You can check it out now. But it shows there's a lot of, again, those car cams, those I don't know exactly what you call them, but they caught a lot of video. You'll be seeing more and more as the days go on. But this one didn't blow up like the other one did. This one just caused what I think is a sonic boom. People are saying it blew up, but I think it's just a sonic boom. Did you get a chance to look at the videos?
I did. I watched a few videos. There's a really good Huffington Post story out there that I tweeted that had quite a few videos. One of them was from some videos that ABC News posted. But, pretty just really bright, and you can see the object go past, and it looks huge. And does it seem like Russia's getting more of these than anywhere else?
It does. But I got to tell you, about a month ago, I was outside, and I saw a huge one that lit up the sky.
Really?
But no one else talked about it. I didn't see anything.
Wow.
It was the second biggest one I've ever seen.
It could be. There's just more in Russia because they capture more video because they have these, like you were talking about, these cameras on their cars. Mm-hmm. Yeah, these dash cams. And I guess they have them for insurance purposes.
Right.
From what I understand. So they just have, whereas everybody's got one out there, but we don't do that so often. So maybe that's it. Well, I did see a huge one.
Yeah. I drove in Russia last May.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. And you definitely need every type of defense you can possibly have. Dash cams.
Yeah, that's what you said.
Yeah, body armor, everything. But anyway, thanks so much, Alejandro. We'll be talking to you next week.
All right. Talk to you soon, buddy.
All righty. Everyone hang in there for this quick music break. We'll be right back with Dean Haglund. Dean, welcome to the show.
Hey.
Hey.
Martin, how are you, sir?
Good. Hey, I'm just hearing a little bit of echo. I'm going to check in the chat room.
Right.
We do have a chat room, just to let you know, and some questions come in on that. We also have a forum with a couple of questions on that. But, let's give this a try and see. I know we had a conversation earlier, and I have heard this many, many times, that Australia has the absolute worst internet possible.
Internet.
Yeah.
That is true. I mean, it's shocking that a country of 26 million or so, and the government had talked about putting in the NBN, the National Broadband Network or something, fiber optic thing, but so far implementation has been slow to non-existent, and it all seems to be luck of the draw, as it were.
Wow. Okay, well, I just found out good news, and that is there's not an echo. I'm only hearing the echo. So I'm going to have to put up with that, and that's okay. I'll just hear you say your response about 5 times. That's okay.
I'm so sorry.
No problem at all. So, hey, so you are from Canada originally, and now you ended up in Australia. Wow. I've always wanted to go there, and we have we have at least one person on the chat room from Australia, and last week I think we had a few. A lot of people are listeners to the show. I've talked to you briefly. A country out of 26 million, it's the third largest country that listens to the show, which is really amazing.
Fantastic.
Right. And do you see in Australia that a lot of people are into not only the UFO topic, but, similar topics?
Yeah, like the paranormal and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I came here originally doing sci-fi conventions, and the X-Files, of course, which dealt with all of this stuff, drew a massive – I think Australia actually had higher ratings for the X-Files than the U.S. market for a while. Wow. A couple seasons there. More people were watching the X-Files in Australia than were in the U.S. Per capita, that sort of thing. But yeah, there certainly is a lot of not just I wouldn't call it paranoia, but there's a certain questioning of the government that goes on here as a par for course. Anytime you get into a pub, there's always that conversation that goes on, and there's also been many. People have told me many witness accounts of lights in the sky and paranormal things going on, and also a lot of ghosts. Ghost hunting is a big thing here, too.
Wow. Yeah, someone just said on the message board, there's a lot of UFO sightings, which I do hear that. And there's been some iconic, I know you haven't lived there that long. And by the way, someone from Canada just called you a traitor. And I know you have a great sense of humor. You do improv and all that, which is so we can horse around a little bit. It's no.
Yeah, totally. I'm not offended at all.
Yeah. There's some great. You'll find if you stay in Australia for a long time and you look into the subject of UFOs. Now, I know you also did a film called UFOs, or you're involved in a film called UFOs. The Truth is Out There.
Truth is out. Yeah. Yes, that was a documentary. I do a podcast, too, called Chill Pack Hollywood Hour, and my co-host came to a convention, and he said he could not believe the amount of people that came up and were telling me stories, personal experiences, that sort of thing. And he thought, we should get a film crew and just follow you around the world for a year, and then that will be this documentary. So 2009, 2010, somewhere in there, I basically had a film crew go from convention to convention around the globe, and then we cut that into a documentary called The Truth is Out There, where we go about exploring consciousness and conspiracies and UFOs and all that sort of thing, but with the sense of joy and the sense of fun, that this idea of searching for the truth can actually be uplifting and not take you down to a dark, rabbit hole of paranoia and distrust and all that sort of thing.
Right. Now, there was somewhere in that film, I think you mentioned that Chris Carter said that he didn't want, I don't know if it was you who said it, but didn't want you to call or look into science fiction or be involved in any science fiction because he thought it was more the X-Files was more science probability.
Absolutely. Yeah, he gave me a call one time, and he said, look, I know you're doing science fiction conventions, but we'd rather, the X-Files not be a part of that. Because to him, science fiction was, guys in polyester jumpsuits flying through space and that sort of thing. And I go, well, what is the X-Files then? He goes, well, it's more science probability. And to that case, it's sort of true. I mean, they did a lot of research. Vince Gilligan, Frank Spotnitz, John Scheiben, all the writers carefully every episode, the plot line or the thing that Mulder would be investigating were often based on real cases or known paranormal events and that sort of thing. And then they would sort of develop the story around that. So in that matter, in terms of the UFOs and all of that and Chris Carter's belief, he didn't want to make it fictionalized per se, but in fact, give it the gravitas that he thought it deserved.
Well, I've always wanted to ask this question, and you're the only X-Files person I'm sure that I'll ever talk to. I don't think Chris will ever be on the show, but has anything ever happened like in reverse? In other words, had anyone ever come up with an idea for one of the shows, the X-Files, and ran it, and then something like it actually happened? Something weird. Have you ever?
I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. For me, I even talk about this in the documentary. I don't think now if I even saw a UFO, I would ever report it because everybody would go, "Oh, Dean's missing the X-Files so much. He's seeing lights in the sky."
Yeah.
Similar to when Mel Gibson, was it Mel or who?
Oh no,
or
I know
Crowe.
Russell Crowe. Yeah.
Russell Crowe, yeah, filmed the reflection in his window or whatever, and was baffled by this sighting, and everybody just pointed out he just filmed the bathroom light in his own hotel room or something like that. So these kind of things sort of make you reticent if I do actually witness anything to come forward, only because of my relationship to the X-Files and your life as a known person. You sort of get into that realm. So that said, back to your question, has anything on the show reverse engineered itself into real life? And there's been a couple of times, when I've been doing stand-up, I've had ex-FBI agents come up and say, "So where did Chris get this information? Because some of it's pretty factual."
Wow.
And and they were like, "How did he do that?" Because and they wouldn't go into details. They go, "What episode are we talking about?" And of course, because it's classified, they wouldn't say anything. So, and Chris, had talked to FBI agents regarding, just consultants. They're in Hollywood all the time. They even have at the FBI office in Los Angeles, they have an annual writers meeting where writers can come and they'll sort of take you through the latest procedures and all that sort of thing. So if you're doing an FBI TV series, you are, keeping it factual and keeping it current on how FBI's do their work. So that's not outside the realm, but to hear that the FBI guys are going, he's come really close to some cases is intriguing.
Interesting, really. Wow. Now, along those same lines, the pilot for the Lone Gunmen, I think it was the pilot, where they actually had the commercial airliner flying toward the trade buildings, the towers.
Yes, the World Trade Center.
6 months before it happened.
Exactly. And we filmed this. Vince Gilligan wrote that episode. So for the listeners who don't know, there was a spin-off of the X-Files called The Lone Gunmen, which had my character plus Tom Braidwood and Bruce Harwood, the three of us, on our own series. That had the X-Files crew and writing staff behind it. And that episode, we stop a plane from flying into the World Trade Center that was taken over by a computer chip and flying remotely. And at the last minute, using all sorts of hacking techniques, we get the control back to the pilots, and they fly just over the top of it at the very last second. And as we say in the series, the reason this is done is to start an international war on terror.
Wow. So
that happens. 6 months later, 9/11 happens. I'm not even putting the two together because, I've already forgotten about the episode. It was one of the other writers called me, said, "Are you watching this?" And suddenly it all came together. And Vince Gilligan wrote that pilot episode, and when questioned, he said he got the idea from a Tom Clancy novel.
Oh.
There's a Tom Clancy novel where a plane flies into the World Trade Center. So when Condoleezza Rice said there was nothing in popular culture, there was nobody even thinking about this, she was incorrect. There was a Lone Gunmen pilot episode. There was a Tom Clancy novel. It was out there in the consciousness for sure.
Jeez, amazing, huh?
Really amazing.
Yeah. Let's see. So was So when Vince was actually, you worked with Vince Gilligan, really, really super talented, Breaking Bad. I mean, you've worked with many talented people, but Vince is really amazing through the episodes of Breaking Bad and
and Better Call Saul.
Right.
I don't know if you're watching the
which is really funny.
Too.
I've seen that. Yeah, I watched that.
Yeah, that an amazing going backwards in time.
That's right.
Telling how the lawyer Saul came to be the lawyer for drug dealers and criminals.
I don't think he's called Saul yet. Yeah.
He's not even called Saul, right?
Right. Yeah.
That's right.
Someone wanted to know on the question, had a question on the message board, the cliffhanger ending of the last season. Do you think there's any truth to it? And I don't remember what that is. I know I watched some of the episodes. I don't remember if I watched all of them.
The cliffhanger, are we talking about these 6 episodes that were the redo? I guess that's the cliffhanger we're talking about? Season 10 of the X-Files?
I think so.
Or are we talking the cliffhanger of the Lone Gunmen where we're trapped in a vault 16 floors below with all government information? Both of them are cliffhangers. Neither one has been resolved. Is there any truth? Is there vault 16 stories below storing all information of every conspiracy? I give that one 75%. The X-Files, this is a pivot that Chris Carter's done that's been pretty clever in terms of up till this time, Scully's been the non-believer and Mulder's been the believer, and now the whole previous 10 seasons of the X-Files has been just to get her genetic offspring of an alien-human hybrid to do whatever season 11 will tell us is the thing. So it's quite a cliffhanger. And what's the question? Do I believe it? Is there alien-human hybrids? In our documentary, Cynthia Crawford, who's an artist, opens her interview with the first thing you should know is I'm an alien-human hybrid. And there's no mockery. There's no winking of the eye. She knows she's an alien-human hybrid, and she is in the spiritual connection with different Pleiades and Greys and stuff like that. So she's the nicest woman. She has no reason to lie to me. So in that case, I believe Cynthia Crawford to be true.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
I've seen. I was in Phoenix last year at the UFO Congress, and there were some people claiming to be. And I'm sorry, I just didn't buy it. I don't know if I'm going to get any flack for saying that, but I just couldn't get it, couldn't feel it. A lot of the things. I
guess that's the thing, right? I mean, how do you prove a genetic hybridation, right? So I had this conversation with a Berkeley biologist, and I said, well, here's an obvious one. How about the fact that the human body can't retain vitamin C? How would you evolve to have water or have water-soluble vitamin C pass through your system when it is necessary for life? If you don't have it, you get scurvy. What evolutionary process would make that be a constant? Do you know what I mean? And so he said, well, that's not that weird because gerbils or some other animal, they don't retain vitamin C. He said the weirder thing is your own immune system. If you're evolving from a single-cell amoeba, at what point do you then select certain cells and viruses to then suddenly be rejected? Theoretically, you shouldn't have an immune system. You should be able to take everything in and be that part of your evolutionary ladder. So this is the sort of discussion I get into when going to stand-up comedy clubs and conventions around the world. And it's always fascinating. But, of course, it's hard to argue with an evolutionary biologist from Berkeley when, my high school education from Canada doesn't really give me the guns. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Now, this whole topic of that you're you seem to have an interest in. Was it sort of through osmosis of being involved in the X-Files, or did you have a curiosity at a younger age?
Well, no, my brother was more the curious one. In fact, when I got on the X-Files, I would often call him and have him explain what I'm talking about in the scripts. So, some of the writing was really brilliant. And, of course, I would go to Vince and Frank and Chris and ask, what does all this mean? And they said, well, do you want to actually meet, some of the people who we are basing your characters on? And so they set up interviews with, Jordan Maxwell, Dr. Roger Lear, Richard Dolan, Dr. Richard Dolan, a lot of these guys. And so I would meet and have lunch with them, Stan Friedman, that sort of thing. And then, from that, they said, oh, you should come to this UFO con or, come to the Laughlin when it was in Laughlin, Nevada, come there. And then from there, I met, David Sereda and Bob Dean and all these guys and had these similar conversations, at which point they would have a stack of research because they've dedicated their life to it. And I would say, oh, well, okay, well, that can't possibly be true because this, and then they would be able to refute that with reams of information and, leaving me there to with my jaw dropped and going, oh, that's fascinating. So it was from the X-Files and a continuation that I, sort of learned about this stuff. And then, of course, people would come to me because they knew that I had the ability to talk to these guys and sort of discern not just what was true and untrue, but also what was the thinking, what lines of pursuit were people taking on various subjects. And so I sort of became the go-to guy for that.
Wow. We have kind of a related question in the forum. Now, anyone that wants to join the forum, you can join the forum very easily. And I have a little place there where people can post questions. So we have, I think we have 3 of them tonight. So what influence do you think the show has on the UFO community and the general public at large? I think he's talking about the X-Files. Do you think?
Right.
Yeah. Do you think it had a positive effect by bringing awareness to the topic, or do you think it was used more in a negative way, with sighting reports easily dismissed by claims of you've been watching too many X-Files?
Well, this is Perry Farrell from Jane's Addiction, and he refused to play on the X-Files compilation CD. He refused to give a song because that very thing. He said the X-Files set back human-alien relations by 30 years. So he's a big believer in aliens, and he thought that very thing, that the X-Files, by popularizing it, also trivialized it and allowed for anyone who was pursuing it to go, oh, you're just a big fan of the show, and to be able to diminish it. And this was a criticism that Chris Carter was aware of, too, hence why he didn't want me going to science fiction conventions because, again, he was very careful to not have that happen. That said, that has happened, and I'm sure it's happened to you and other people that just who pursue UFO or paranormal phenomena as a scientific, pursuit, as a study, as a field of study, are then sort of diminished as a X-Files watcher, tinfoil hat wearer, whatever derogatory, diminished thing can be thrown at you.
So has anyone just out and out come out and said that the X-Files was just a form of media disinformation? Like some truth mixed in, some false just to muddy the waters? I mean, no one ever has blatantly accused the show of that. And I think because the quality was so good. I mean,
every episode, even though it took 8 days to film, would often take 2 weeks to a month to film, because the quality, Chris Carter wanted each one of those to be like a mini feature film, an hour-long film, So there was never any sense of, oh, let's just churn this stuff out, get it out there, and then collect our paychecks. There was a real passion for the story. There was a real intense love for the characters and for the subject matter. So I never personally got any feedback going, this is a false flag disinformation front put on by media elites or anything like that.
Wow. Yeah. Really interesting. Now, when the X-Files first started, did anyone have any idea it was going to be the blockbuster it turned into?
Oh, no, clearly not. Even I auditioned for the first season. The gunmen show up in episode 14 or 13 or something like that. And at the time, my agent didn't even know. He said, it's some FBI, it's procedural, maybe aliens are involved. I don't know, just go audition. Like, he had no idea. So, and if you watch the first 3 years of Lone Gunmen appearances, my character Langley, his glasses are different every time, because the props guy, when I came to set, I don't actually wear glasses. So the props guy came with a giant plastic bag of black glasses. He said, oh, here, pick one. And then I'd wear it, and then I'd just throw it back in the giant plastic bag of black glasses. And then when I suddenly show up for the next episode, 8, 10 episodes later, the props guy would come and go, oh, do you remember which one of these 30 to 40 glasses you were wearing? I don't know. And so every time I'd be just like wearing different glasses, because everybody thought, oh, how long can this show last? It's going to be canceled. So nobody was taking any consideration. And it wasn't until the third year where the props guy goes, okay, we're going to put these aside for you, because clearly you're going to be coming back, you're a recurring character.
That is funny. Now, going back to early in your life, you said your brother was into things. Was there a reason he was into things? Like, did something happen, UFO sighting or anything like that? Or
No, he was more science-minded and history-based. So he was much more into Egyptology and lost technologies. The idea of the battery, all of that stuff. So he sort of was following that realm a lot more, which then leads you into how were the pyramids built, the return every 25,000 years of the ninth planet and that sort of thing.
Oh, yeah, the ninth planet. That's something that you're interested in.
Yeah, well, from my brother. I mean, we because he knew he was talking about this 30, 40 years ago, that, that our consciousness cycle is in a 25,000 year loop curve. I don't know how you would describe it. But the last time it was this high was at the height of the Egyptian culture of, pyramids and electricity, and how are they be able to build the chambers with perfectly square walls and paint the interior with no light whatsoever, hundreds of meters below ground and that sort of thing, So this idea that now astronomers are finding that there's a ninth planet that we can't actually see, but they know pretty much where it is, and that it's returning to our solar system, means that this will now be a rise in our consciousness again, back to the way it was in the time of the pyramids and all that technology. So,
wow, I definitely think there could be, bodies out there, way out in the edges of our solar system, and certainly could be orbiting beyond what we think is our solar system, that we have no idea that are there. We can't see them. I think that is very possible. These things could be out there and eventually may or may never be found.
Well, that's true, right? I mean, how many close calls with meteorites and stuff that no matter how many telescopes we have looking in every direction, there's still one that surprises everyone, and it's a close call. So there's such a vast, infinite amount of space to look at that where to actually train a Hubble Space Telescope or a Kepler, in which direction. And as I learned from the Wilson Observatory, it's booked years in advance, right? So all of these astronomers have to go in, they have to book the time to then point the telescope in what they want to study and pick it at certain times and stuff like that. So it's not just you can go in one evening and randomly look around the sky. That's sort of what citizen scientists do. And then if they see something, announce it to the scientific field at large.
Right. Well, there's a former astronaut that is involved in a project looking for asteroids, and I just can't remember. I don't think we do enough of that because, we could easily get wiped out. And for us, we have so much technology now. I understand that if something is coming from the direction of the sun, it's almost impossible to detect. But, if anyone, goes online and they look at the asteroid belt and look at how many bodies are floating out there, it's pretty scary. There's millions. And
millions out there. And even just the sheer amount of space guard junk and stuff that surrounds just in our own orbit on Earth, of all the jettison spent rocket fuel tubes and all of that.
Yeah, I know there's thousands of pieces, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, I always encourage everybody to, as Chris Carter, and how many 1950s UFO movies ended with "Keep watching the skies," which is actually a good motto. The more citizen scientists that are out there monitoring, making observations, the better off everybody would be, I think.
Right. We don't need an extinction event, but I don't know what we would do. Like, just for instance, if all of a sudden we found that there's something heading our way that is going to wipe us out, and it's, say, 10 weeks out or 6 months out, what the heck are we going to do? I mean, is it going to be...
Well, exactly. I mean, launching nuclear weapons or a la Bruce Willis and Armageddon,
right.
Like all of those scenarios seem implausible and far-fetched. But at the same time, doing nothing is also ridiculous. So I think, and I've heard that NASA has some action plan in place, though how effective it would be is dependent on, trajectories and all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I believe in 2029 an asteroid comes within. Yeah. And then from that, we'll know the fate of us by 2035 when it comes back around.
2035 or 36, something like that. I read 36, that too. Yeah.
Yeah.
The second time it comes around, it's either we're going to know we're going to have that much. It's like 7 years where we know whether we're going to get, squished out or not. So we do have time to do something.
Absolutely.
Someone wanted to know in the chat room, have you read Graham Hancock's newest book?
Not his newest one. He, of course, was a guest on our we interviewed him in The Truth Is Out There, the documentary. And I just heard his book came out, but it's been very busy for me, so I haven't had a chance to read it. Have you?
Yeah. No. The person in the chat room obviously has thought, so I'll probably get some feedback from that. But another person was saying that Jose Chung's From Outer Space is his favorite piece of UFO fiction. And have you ever had a chance to work with writer Darren Morgan?
A chance to work with him? Well, he was also an actor in a couple episodes. Darren Morgan, you could see on the X-Files episode with the guy with the tail. What was that episode called? I forget. But But no, Darren Morgan is a genius. Of course, he's the brother of Glenn Morgan and James Wan, the guys who actually created the Lone Gunmen. And Darren is a brilliant writer, but a bit of a recluse. So he often keeps to himself and writes these brilliant things, comes out. Will have his brother sort of pitch it. I think he even uses his brother's agent. I don't think he actually pursues writing seriously, hence why you only see him his name on work occasionally. So everybody loves when a Darren Morgan script comes into the production office.
Wow.
However, I have not had the benefit. Only Glenn Morgan, who has, of course, invented the Lone Gunmen, I've worked with.
Now, I did hear a real short, maybe like a 5 or 10 minute interview with Chris Carter, and he's thought that it's possible, if everybody's up for it, that they might go again. Have you heard anything about that?
Yes. Season 11. Sounds like it's everybody's on board. Chris is on board. David and Gillian want to do it. Fox definitely wants to do it because they thought this 10 episode, originally season 10 with the newest 6 episodes, was strictly co-financed by Netflix, because Netflix was going to show the entire series, The X-Files, on Netflix, but they wanted to wrap the series up. So they said, we'll pay for 6 more episodes to co-produce with Fox, and then if that could just sort of wrap it up, then we'll put it up on Netflix. However, it became so well received, and the executives loved it so much that they said, well, why don't we continue this? So there is a season 11. However, Gillian is involved with a series called The Fall, and David is just finishing. I'm not sure where Aquarius is at. I don't know if they got picked up again or not. So everybody's got scheduling and commitment issues and all that sort of thing. But I think it's definitely going to happen.
I think didn't I see somewhere that how the Lone Gunmen had their spin-off was that David and Gillian were filming the X-Files movie and were not available, and that they kind of did like a Lone Gunmen type episode in season 6 or something? Yeah.
Season 5, the first, the episode was called Unusual Suspects, I think. But yes, what happened was David was doing another movie, and he had to go for reshoots. And Gillian also scheduled for some other thing in London. So everybody was scratching their head going, well, what are we going to do? And they said, well, let's just show an origin episode of the Lone Gunmen. And so they wrote that. And then, of course, David can come in for the last day of shooting, and sort of we can, put him through the whole thing. So that's basically the first time the Gunmen had an episode on for themselves. They did it a number of times after that when scheduling conflicts came up again. And then when it came time to go, we have a contract here to pitch a couple more shows. What should we pitch? They just showed the episode of the Unusual Suspects to the executives going, here's the series. We follow these guys. So
yeah, I
know. So that was pretty easy how that series came together.
I think I've watched a little bit of the Lone Gunmen. I think it's some of it's really hilarious. I think it's every once in a while the X-Files would have a show that was funny, and even in season 10, I remember watching one the last season. But you guys were a lot looser and pretty funny.
Well, yeah, I know. This is what Vince told me too. He said, we've now spent at that point it was 8 seasons writing some of the darkest, heaviest, going through the minutiae of a syndicate coming down on you. It was always so dark and so, oh my gosh. And all they wanted to do was, have some fun and lighten it up. So when it came time for the gunmen, they had us, a lot more. Some would say too goofy, but that tone would have been found later on had the series continued. So it was really all the writers that had been on a short leash in terms of how far they could go and being fun. The Lone Gunmen gave them that permission to write the funniest stuff they could do.
Yeah, great. Here's another question on the forum. With the revelation of government-sanctioned eavesdropping by the WikiLeaks scandal, the X-Files often centered around conspiracy theories and government cover-ups. How much truth would you say is possible from the fiction of the show?
How much truth is possible?
Yeah, I think the question is, I think the question means that there was a lot, of course the show was fiction about a lot of the conspiracy and government cover-ups, but how much of it do you think is possible that it really could be so?
Well, I think a lot of it, because, this is, again, where Chris was always interested in this and really wanted to not just explore but speak of this stuff, but you have to do it in an entertaining way. If you just did it as a hard-hitting documentary, then you're Jesse Ventura and you're on True TV, and that the same information that's on that show is on the X-Files, only it's put in a fictionalized format so that information can be put out there without it being hit over your head. You know what I mean?
Right.
So they went to a lot of lengths to research that, to find out, pre Snowden, a lot of what potentially was going on. They would get tours of Intel, the chip manufacturing. They would go to Microsoft. They would be shown the R&D lab in terms of what future technologies were coming, all that sort of thing. So it was carefully researched. So I think a lot of what on the X-Files is actually true, as the FBI agents who came up to me and hinted at, going, "Where are you getting this information?"
That is crazy. Someone wanted to know what your favorite episode, whether you worked in it or not. What was your favorite X-Files episode?
Well, for me, of course, I growing up and going to university in Vancouver, would often see the Jim Rose Freak Circus at the bars, and then to see them all cast in an episode called Humbug, where there's a retired circus freak community in Florida, which was all of the characters, the Enigma, Jim Rose, all of them that I enjoyed so much on stage were all in the same episode. I think that, to me, was one of the funnest episodes and one of my favorite.
Yeah, definitely. Personally, it would be. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. I don't know if you've ever seen I don't think he does that anymore, and I don't think anybody actually does this sort of small-time circus freak show anymore. But these guys were amazing. One of the most amazing things I ever saw was a Tuesday night. Me and my roommate are playing pool, and a couple of guys come up on stage, and there was a musical act, and then this guy comes up on stage, and and we had just finished playing a pool game, and he puts the money in, and all the billiard balls come out, and he swallows 6 of them on stage. And then he goes, "Call out a number from 1 to 6. He asked the audience, and somebody yells out 3, and then he, using his abdominal muscles, regurgitates the 3 billiard ball. And then has all 6 come out in the order that the audience calls it out. It's not a magic act. He just has that kind of control that he can just throw up billiard balls and have 6. I think maybe even 8, because he had the 8 ball down there too.
Oh my God.
He must have swallowed 8 billiard balls, left that in his stomach, and was able to somehow know where each one was and be able to regurgitate them on command.
Wow.
Now, that is a show like I've never seen. And I don't know what happened to that guy, and I've never seen him again.
Oh, he may not be alive, and don't try this at home, listeners. Don't try this at home.
I know. How do you even learn that? How would that? I wish that guy was. I wish that guy was listening to this show and would email me to tell me his secrets.
Yeah, I wonder if he learned by accident somehow.
Yeah. Well, how do you accidentally swallow a billiard ball? Even that seems improbable.
Well, yeah, leaning over too far at the table or something. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm not sure either.
Yeah. Let's see. There was. This is another question. And have you? Oh, wait a minute. I'm sorry. Nope. That's a former one. That was a former one I already asked. Sorry about that.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, this was had you also thought that you traveled around the world, you said, and you did this show with UFOs. And do you think you hear about it, it's such a and we do have listeners worldwide, but a lot of people will say there's certain times where UFOs are over America and they're over this country and over that country, during certain years. Have you heard of anything like that in your travels?
Yeah. Well, one of the funniest, well, not funny, but one that was sort of eye-opening was David Sereda, of course, renowned researcher.
Canadian. Isn't he a Canadian a newscaster? I mean, doesn't he do a show?
Yeah, I think now he moved to Canada and has a show. But when I knew him, he was living in Los Angeles. He was kind of my neighbor, and then he was in Phoenix for a while. But he pointed out that a lot of the sightings in Area 51 and stuff like that sort of dried up with the signing of NAFTA, where suddenly they were showing up in Mexico. And this idea that we had outsourced the building of either reverse technology or experimental anti-gravitational aircraft that were being test flown originally in Nevada, but now being test flown in Mexico, was the rise of Mexican sightings and the diminishing of the Nevada sightings. And so if you pursue that idea where you go, where are the sightings versus where are the manufacturing capabilities to manufacture top secret military anti-gravitational devices, and how would that go? I think that David was able to draw a line that sort of was made me go, oh yeah, that could possibly be, because he worked with a lot of guys from Lockheed Martin and Skunk Works and all that sort of thing, and he said that anytime you see any triangular shape, that is technically just one of our secret machines, because the triangle makes the E wave. He had a much more scientific explanation for why a triangle was necessary for creating an anti-gravitational field. And I guess you have to listen to his show for that. But in terms of looking for UFOs, if you see anything that is in a triangular formation, that's probably one of ours. And then anything else in any other shape other than that is then either unknown or, as I forgot who told me about this, but also aerobiology. Idea that there's creatures that live in the upper atmosphere, and then when they come down to 14 pounds per square inch of pressure, their bodies then be able to reflect light, even though they live in the air. And they're not necessarily birds, but they're biological entities, and that are often reported as tube-shaped or glowing masses.
I've heard of people talk about that, and I've heard of that. It is an interesting theory. I will tell you, and I probably say this a lot. I think this is the 230th show that I've done, and I still don't have a clue at all what UFOs are.
Yeah, I know, right?
And I think that's yeah. And I think when you did that documentary and you talked to all those people, you hear different things, but I don't know what the conclusion is or is going to be.
Well, that's the thing. I think it's such a wide field, and if as we learned now in the 1950s, the experimental aircraft that were flying around, the SR 51 Blackbird and all that sort of thing, these were top secret, high flying aircraft that were so advanced in their design that, even then they would look like UFOs, particularly from certain angles, and you wouldn't hear them because at the time, what were we flying in? A couple of DC-3 de Havillands. So, the technology that we know existed in the 50s versus what was commercially available, if you extrapolate that in two different timelines in terms of experimental aircraft and what we're flying commercially and what we know is out there, again, I would think a lot of that would be relegated to UFOs and stuff like that.
Well, that's it for the free part of the show. Thanks so much for listening. And next week, we'll be back with Colonel Charles Halt. He's going to be talking about The Halt Perspective, a new book which just came out. I want to thank a few people. Of course, our guest, Dean Alejandro Rojas, for the UFO updates in the beginning. Carrie Lloyd Whitehouse for the music. Peggy Shunning for managing the Facebook page. Remember to like us on Facebook. There's updated UFO news on there almost every day. Remember, you can listen to the full shows instead of just hour one by supporting us for $2 or more per month. That information's on Podcast UFO. And we'll be back next week. Thank you, and keep your eyes to the sky.